Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
People of Gaza need food, water, medicine, shelter. Today, I asked the Israeli cabinet, who I met with for some time this morning, to agree to the delivery of life-saving humanitarian assistance to civilians in Gaza.
President Biden in Tel Aviv today announcing an agreement with Israeli leaders to allow humanitarian aid to civilians in Gaza. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. It comes as the death toll in Gaza nears 3,500 people and more than 12,000 others injured. President Biden says $100 million in aid will cover safe water, emergency food, shelter, and health care services for Palestinians. The president also promised U.S. support for Israel in its war with Hamas, saying he plans to ask Congress for an unprecedented support package for Israel's defense later this week. And demonstrations over the situation in Israel and Gaza are happening all over the world, and San Diego is no exception. Earlier this afternoon, a group showed up at Representative Sarah Jacobs' Kearny Mesa office demanding action to prevent what they call the genocide of Palestinians. And KPBS reporter John Carroll is live there with more. John?
That's right, Maya. But first of all, you might be wondering why I'm standing here in Balboa Park's Spreckels Organ Pavilion. It's because this is the site of another demonstration coming up at 7 tonight. The one here will be held by a group calling itself San Diego for Palestine Coalition. But earlier this afternoon, about 20 people gathered in front of Representative Sarah Jacobs' Kearny Mesa office. The organizers are from a local group called Jewish Voice for Peace. One of the leaders, Shalem Aboudi Lopez, talked about what they're asking Jacobs to do. Then they walked into the lobby of the building where they were met with a staffer from Jacobs' office. You'll hear both of those moments now.
We're asking her to support a resolution that her colleagues are supporting in Congress for a ceasefire and to allow humanitarian aid into Gaza.
This resolution calls for President Biden to facilitate a path to ceasefire and to facilitate a path for humanitarian aid into Gaza.
Thank you so much. The Congresswoman takes this issue very seriously, and we're very happy to receive the rocks and the letter from you all to pass it on to her.
Okay, thank you.
You heard the Jacobs representative talk about rocks there. Here they are in several vases. Aboudi Lopez says it's a Jewish tradition to put rocks on people's graves. She told us each rock represents 3,000 people who have died, which at this point totals more than 4,000 on both sides of this awful conflict. So again, back out here live in Balboa Park, the demonstration here at the Organ Pavilion starts at 7 this evening. Live in Balboa Park, John Carroll, KPBS News.
And thanks for that report, John. And tomorrow, President Biden will address the nation. He is set to discuss the U.S. response to the Israel-Hamas war, as well as Russia's war against Ukraine. And we will carry it live here on KPBS at 5 o'clock tomorrow night, followed by PBS NewsHour analysis. An evening edition will air live at 5:30 on KPBS2 and on our YouTube page. In Tijuana, Mexican National Guard troops were caught on tape trying to illegally raid a migrant shelter. KPBS border reporter Gustavo Solis says this is an example of Mexico's increased aggression against migrants.
Video from the Borderline Crisis Center's security cameras shows uniformed soldiers armed with long rifles trying to force their way inside the shelter. This happened around midnight on October 11th.
They were demanding the female residents, it's women and children here, to open up the shelter gate and let them in. They were accusing them of hiding undocumented persons and helping people to cross the border through an irregular means, which is not correct.
Nicole Ramos is a director with Al Otro Lado, a nonprofit that organizes legal workshops at the shelter. She says this shelter is home to some of the most vulnerable migrant populations, including Black and lesbian women and single mothers with young children. Many of them have already faced harassment by local law enforcement in Tijuana.
Women have to protect women in this city because the authorities do not protect us. In many cases, the authorities are the ones that are against us or actively trying to harm us.
Judith Cabrera is co-director of the Borderline Crisis Center. She says many of the soldiers wore masks and refused to identify themselves. They had no search warrants. She says this raid violates Mexican law.
They're not allowed to have to do migratory checkpoints in places where humanitarian aid is being provided. It goes against the right of the migrant community to receive humanitarian aid, and it goes against our right to provide it.
Cabrera is calling this raid on a migrant shelter an escalation of the Mexican government's migration enforcement. The United States government has long pressured Mexico to stop migrants from getting to the U.S. border, all the way back to the Obama administration, and the Trump and Biden administrations have taken the same approach.
We have to stop seeing immigrants as criminals. They are not. They are mostly very vulnerable people fleeing for their lives, trying to survive, protecting their children.
The Mexican National Guard did not respond to questions about their involvement in the raid. Gustavo Solis, KPBS News.
I'm Ariella Scalise, and tonight under a mostly clear sky, temperatures are dropping to the 60s, but more heat on the way throughout the end of the week. And then we get the marine layer returning. Some cooler conditions also make a comeback. Much more to come in just a few minutes.
Defense-related spending in San Diego grew this year despite a net decline in jobs, and that's according to a new report on the region's military economy. KPBS military reporter Andrew Dyer has more on the region's second largest economy.
The Navy Marine Corps relief.
There aren't a lot of surprises in this year's Military Economic Impact Report. It says defense-related spending, the Military and Veterans Affairs, contributes more than $56.5 billion to San Diego's economy. The report is the result of a joint effort by the nonprofit San Diego Military Advisory Council and UC San Diego's Rady School of Management.
We want people to understand that there's a lot of good that comes from being a military town.
Mark Balmert is a retired Rear Admiral and the CEO of the Military Advisory Council. He says it's beneficial for decision makers and the public to understand the military's local impact.
For community leaders, media, academia to kind of put a number on how big the military footprint is here.
And it is a large footprint. The report says when the region's 111,000 active duty service members are accounted for with the defense contractors, healthcare workers, and the military civilian workforce, more than 350,000 local jobs exist because of money spent either directly or indirectly on the military. California State Senate President Pro Tem Toni Atkins spoke at the report's release event Wednesday at the Marine Corps Recruit Depot. She says in addition to informing state and local lawmakers, the annual report also makes it clear just how stabilizing continued defense spending is to the economy.
Especially in a year like this, when California's resources are a little more limited, our region significantly benefits from the stability of the military's economic contributions to San Diego, and again, I would say the entire state.
The report found that while spending increased, the total number of jobs was down 0.5% from last year, equating to thousands of jobs. Balmert attributes the drop to expired military contracts related to the pandemic, such as those supporting COVID testing and vaccinations. Andrew Dyer, KPBS News.
The Coronado City Council has approved a plan to bring the city into compliance with state affordable housing laws. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says 9 sites in the city will have to be rezoned for higher density housing.
Tuesday night's City Council meeting was a packed house. The meeting came more than 2 years after Coronado thumbed its nose at the state's affordable housing laws and zoned for only a third of the homes the state deemed necessary to meet the city's housing needs. But the city relented after the state threatened to sue. The sites to be rezoned include a church, a child care center, and the city's police department. Many residents expressed concerns about the impacts of allowing more growth in the city. Councilmember Casey Tanaka says he shares those concerns.
But I also want to make it clear, we're all sitting here because the state creates the process that we have to follow, and then your elected officials, your appointed officials, we have to work within those parameters.
The city's new housing element assumes the Navy will build hundreds of military housing units in Coronado, and that hundreds of homeowners will build new accessory dwelling units in their backyards.
I firmly believed that having a potential compliant housing plan was impossible. I did not believe we could come up with one. And the fact that we have one now that by all likelihood the state will agree to certify with maybe some minor changes, to me is like remarkable.
State laws around housing have gotten harder for cities to follow. 4 other cities in San Diego County still don't have a state-certified housing element: Escondido, Lemon Grove, Oceanside, and Poway. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
In 1961, hundreds of black and white protesters known as Freedom Riders were imprisoned for riding together on segregated buses into the South. And at just 13, Hezekiah Watkins became the youngest among them by accident. And tonight, he's sharing his story at the University of San Diego. KPBS reporter Katie Hyson has a first look.
Open the door. Hezekiah Watkins and his friend Troy were 13 when they heard the Freedom Riders were coming to their city, Jackson, Mississippi.
And we began a little jingle. The Freedom Riders coming to Jackson. We were just happy. Not happy because we wanted to join the Freedom Riders. We just want to see them and maybe touch one.
But when they arrived at the bus station, it was empty. They began playing, shoving each other as they walked.
And Troy pushed me and I landed inside of the bus station. So I spot this sign across the ceiling and I'm looking, said whites only. But before I could back completely out, this officer hit me on my shoulder and asked, "Why are you in here?"
He asked Watkins his birthplace.
And when I said Milwaukee, Wisconsin, he reached in his back pocket, a little two-way radio. I don't know what he said, but they came like flies, just running in, and said, "We got another one here."
Mistaken for a Freedom Rider, Watkins was placed on death row at Parchman Prison with no due process. He was released 11 days later at the orders of then-President John F. Kennedy. Watkins says that experience pushed him to become an activist. He's proud of each of the 109 times he's been arrested. To hear more, visit kpbs.org. Katie Hyson, KPBS News.
Chula Vista temporarily shut down Harborside Park and is considering closing it for good. That's angered many Chula Vista residents, especially the families living in a mobile home park just a couple of blocks away. KPBS South Bay reporter Corey Suzuki reports.
A group of kids race back and forth at a fork in the road. It's early in the afternoon. The street vibrates with the rush of the nearby freeway, cheers, and the twang of a soccer ball. And then a crash. Several players let out gasps.
He kicked the ball in the pond.
The occasional flying soccer ball has become pretty common here at Brentwood, a mobile home park in southwest Chula Vista. Dozens of young families live here. The narrow roads are lined with colorful plastic play sets and bright yellow signs that warn cars to drive slow. Ana Ramirez is a parent of one of the soccer players, and she says all the kids running around has been causing a lot of frustration.
The neighbors complain because they can break a window, they can destroy their plants, and yeah, they can, but because they're kids, they don't want to be inside and indoors just in the TV.
But right now, kids in Brentwood don't have anywhere else to go. That's because Harborside Park, the only park nearby, is shut down. The city first opened Harborside Park in 2006. It was a sprawling green place with benches, basketball courts, and a wide grass field. Residents of West Chula Vista, and of Brentwood in particular, were really excited. It was the first new park on the west side in over 20 years. Ramirez remembers taking her 3 kids over to Harborside every Saturday.
The swings, all the playground. But also my oldest kid loves soccer, so and basketball. So to have there where they can play soccer, and they can play basketball, or just to relax, or just if a little party reunion with her friends and family, there was a perfect spot.
And it's more than just having a place to run around. Elva Arredondo is a professor of behavioral psychology at San Diego State University.
People who live closer to parks are more likely to be healthier and be more physically active. So there's a very strong link there.
For residents of Brentwood, this new park was one of few green spaces nearby, and it meant a lot that it was just a couple blocks away. In recent years, though, unhoused residents with few places to go in the South Bay started moving into the park. After a long debate, the city council decided to close Harborside temporarily and kick everyone out. At first, many Brentwood residents were relieved. A lot of them had kids who went to the elementary school next door, and some said the encampment had created an unsafe environment. But months went by, then a year. The park stayed closed. And then, this past May, the city council made a surprise announcement. They said they were looking at leasing or selling the land that Harborside was on for housing, maybe permanently closing the park. For Ana Ramirez and her neighbors, it was a shock.
Angry, it's the word probably, because the city let us don't hear us. We want the park to be reopened. We want space for our kids to play, and it's been waiting and waiting.
Now, some Chula Vista residents are lobbying for the park to be reopened. Kevin Valdez is 12 years old and lives in Brentwood.
I would like to see the park reopen so we would have more space and more places to go play, and other kids can come and hang around and everything.
Nothing has been decided for sure, but Brentwood residents hope city leaders will think carefully about this decision, about what exactly it would mean for the West Side to lose Harborside Park. Corey Suzuki, KPBS News.
Uncertainty hangs over Capitol Hill as another day ends without a House Speaker. Congressman Jim Jordan failed to win the vote on the second ballot today. Jordan has vowed to stay in the race despite no clear path to the gavel. 22 Republican lawmakers rejected his bid today, viewing him as too extreme a choice for the Speaker's job. Some are throwing their support behind interim Speaker Patrick McHenry.
I think it's imperative that we empower Patrick McHenry to serve, at least for the time being, in that speaker role, so that he can get the House moving again on critical issues, including, obviously, needed additional financial support for Israel.
Some Republicans are talking with Democrats about their plan to give the temporary speaker more power to reopen the House. 4 Rite Aid stores in San Diego are set to close after the company filed for bankruptcy. According to court documents filed in U.S. District Court in New Jersey, Rite Aid's initial plan is to shut down 154 stores nationwide. Those include 4 locations in our county: Plaza Drive in Oceanside, Main Street in Ramona, Mission Gorge Road, and Mira Mesa Boulevard. Job-based health insurance is a lot more expensive for companies and workers this year. Yearly premiums for family health insurance coverage at work soared to an average of nearly $24,000. And that is according to a health benefits survey from KFF, formerly known as the Kaiser Family Foundation. The average employee share of the annual premium came out to $6,575, and that is a jump of almost $500 from last year, or nearly 8%. KFF says the increase is roughly in line with inflation. It is National Bullying Prevention Month, and about 1 in every 5 U.S. students between the ages of 12 and 18 said that they'd been bullied in a 2019 nationwide survey by National Center for Education Statistics. Mandy Gaither has advice for parents from a therapist.
It can impact every part of a person's life. Being bullied as a child can leave lasting scars.
It can make some kids feel depressed, hopeless, even suicidal.
Parents and caregivers play a big role in bullying prevention, says licensed therapist Jody Baumstein with Children's Healthcare of Atlanta's Strong for Life program.
No child plans or wants to be a bully. And so we have to think about what it is that's going on.
Baumstein says prevention starts at home by creating a safe environment where children can talk about their feelings.
We don't want kids to start to internalize things, push things down, suck it up, because it's going to come out at some point. It's going to come out in other ways. It could come out at other people.
Empathy is also a key component. Baumstein says to teach kids early how to think about others and how their behavior may impact someone else.
You can do this with play. And when you're playing with puppets or dolls or anything else, get them to think about what the other characters or dolls might be experiencing. Or if you're reading a book, stop and pause and ask them, what do you think that character is feeling?
Baumstein says to also teach coping skills to help children navigate their feelings so they don't come out in other ways.
That could be everything from deep breathing to using physical activity and movement to release stress, to being creative, drawing, coloring.
And finally, teach by example.
We can't expect kids to do something that we ourselves are not doing.
For Health Minute, I'm Mandy Gaither.
And starting off with your weather headlines, as this warm-up continues, we've had temperatures well above the historical average, and that looks to continue at least for the next few days. But we'll see a return of more of an onshore flow that strengthens, so that marine layer makes a comeback, and that's eventually going to bring us some cooler temperatures as we head into Friday throughout early next week. So if you're sick of the heat, don't worry, we will eventually get a cool down coming. Temperatures will be cooling tonight. San Diego only down to 60, though. Chula Vista 59, Mount Laguna lower 50s, and Borrego Springs 64 degrees through tonight. The heat advisory continues through our Thursday evening, letting you know just how hot it's going to be for this time of year. Unseasonably warm here for us in and around San Diego. Look at this, 80 degrees for tomorrow. Oceanside also at 80, and Borrego Springs back to the triple digits. Mount Laguna with sunshine will be into the lower 70s. And it's going to be another hot one on Friday as this high pressure continues to strengthen, so a lot of the southwest dealing with the unseasonably warm weather to wrap up our week. Plenty of record temperatures continuing to be set across the region. Let's take you to the coast where 80s continue for Thursday and Friday, but here's that cooling trend I mentioned. 75 on Saturday, and look at more clouds here, maybe even a shower or two in the morning as we head into Monday, keeping temperatures into the lower 70s. We move further inland here, and we have 90 still to deal with for Thursday and Friday, but look at this trend into the 80s by Saturday, low 70s on Sunday, and there we go with the low clouds as we head into Monday, only 73 by the start of next week. To the mountains, where temperatures will eventually drop back down into the 50s, but we have 2 more days of the upper 60s and low 70s before we start to see those temperatures trending a bit cooler as we head into Sunday and Monday, back into the 50s. And we wrap things up in the desert. Triple-digit heat eventually will break, only 83 by the time we head into Monday. For KPBS News, I'm Ariella Scalise.
Inflation woes are forcing Americans to rethink their holiday travel plans. Despite costs, more people expect to travel this year than in 2022. In fact, according to one analyst, this will be the busiest holiday travel season in at least 4 years. Mike Valerio talks to that analyst about the latest industry trends.
The holiday season is quickly approaching, and inflation is impacting travel options for many Americans. A new survey from Bankrate found most travelers are looking for ways to take a trip without breaking the bank.
77% of holiday travelers are making adjustments, but they don't want to skip the trip entirely. They're willing to drive instead of fly. They're willing to stay in cheaper accommodations or pick cheaper activities.
Bankrate senior industry analyst Ted Rossman says you may find deals if you have flexible travel days.
Could you go earlier? Could you stay later? If you're willing to fly the morning of Thanksgiving, that actually might be a big cost savings opportunity, and hopefully you still get there in time for the family dinner.
And make your money work for you.
Take stock of your rewards points and miles, whether it's cashback credit card rewards or airline miles or hotel points. You may be sitting on more value than you realize.
Another concern for travelers, flight delays and cancellations, especially after a rough holiday travel season last year. But you can book with a credit card that has strong travel insurance protections.
A lot of cards will include these at no added cost, and they help with everything from damaged rental cars to canceled or delayed flights, lost or delayed luggage.
Just a few steps you can take to make sure your holidays are as happy and stress-free as possible. For Consumer Watch, I'm Mike Valerio.
It's opening day for the San Diego International Film Festival. Dozens of filmmakers will showcase and discuss their works with the community through talkbacks and panels, and that includes the docu-series Lights, Camera, Friendship. It shows how 16 adults diagnosed with autism learned lessons about independency, advocacy, and friendship. Its creators say the timing of the project is perfect in light of Developmental Disability Employment Awareness Month.
One of the common themes is they all think differently, and which is fascinating when you're talking and learning with someone, is they look at something different. So you're getting 16 very different perspectives. There's certain social norms that come very naturally to a lot of people, and then other people struggle with them. So it's sort of learning about that and how to be vulnerable.
All 16 participants will have a chance to view the film tomorrow at AMC in the UTC Shopping Center. There will be an inclusion in entertainment discussion following. The film festival officially kicks off at 5:30. And here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. Cursive could be making a comeback in California public schools. NPR's Morning Edition has more on the bill recently signed by Governor Newsom. And KPBS Midday Edition has a show focused on the arts, including a Chicano Park Museum exhibit on indigenous art and an opera preview. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. By viewers like you. Thank you.